Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amy and today's video is the Sevilla blouse vlog. I'll be taking you from start to finish my entire process of knitting the pattern by Petite Knit. This project spanned an interesting time of my life. I was in the middle of moving, so you're going to see lots of different scenery as I start this project and go through it to the end. Here I am unboxing the yarn that I'm using for the project. I did choose to use the suggested yarn by Petite Knit. The first one here is Essayer Trio 1, which is a lace weight summer yarn. It's a blend of linen, cotton, and lyocell, and this is in the color ink. I am holding it with the other suggested yarn, which is Essayer Palette. This is a fingering weight 100% cotton, and it's also in the color ink. This yarn has a chainette construction, which is a bit unique, and overall, the cotton feels pretty sturdy. It's not the softest cotton I've ever felt. It feels like a pretty standard cotton, and it has sort of a tape or ribbon-like structure. You can see all 6 balls that I got there, and here is the yarn combo together. The yarns do look pretty different in color when next to each other, so I'm hoping for a bit of a marl in the project. Now, before we get to the exciting part of the project, I do have to do some gauge swatching. With Petite Knit patterns, I usually just need to size up one needle size, so the suggested needle size is 5mm, so I grabbed my 5.5mm needles out of my ChowGoo set. Here I am casting on with both of the yarns held together. I always find summer fibers to be a bit finicky to get out of the ball at the first time. But let's get casting on for a gauge swatch. For gauge swatching, I normally aim for 1.5 times the amount of stitches in the given 4-inch gauge. So for example, if the given gauge is 20 stitches per 4 inches, I will cast on 30 stitches. And then I'll try to knit at least 4 inches of rows. It's better to do more, but I usually end up getting tired after 4 inches. So here's the fabric so far on the 5.5mm needles. You can see it has sort of a matte finish, and I could already realize that my gauge was too big on these needles before even finishing the gauge swatch. For this pattern specifically, we're aiming for an 18 stitch per 4-inch gauge, so I decided to cast on another swatch again with 5mm needles. And here is the finished swatch. You can see there's not really any marling from the 2 yarns, which I'm a little disappointed in, but that's okay. We're gonna continue anyway. Time for a little bath for blocking. I'm just soaking this in some room temperature water. I don't usually use wool wash for my gauge swatches, and here I am drying it on a towel. This was a part of the move where I didn't have access to my blocking boards, and a towel did the trick just fine. The moment of truth, the measuring. Now I have to be honest, I ended up not meeting gauge with the 5mm needles. It was too tight, surprisingly, so I should have stuck with my gut and the original 5.5mm needles, and that's the needle size I ended up using for the rest of the pattern. So here I am, ready to cast on for the actual pattern. I do this little trick where I wrap the yarn around my needle 10 times to see how much yarn is needed for 10 stitches, and then I pull out a stretch of yarn that length for however many stitches of 10 I need to cast on. Looks pretty convoluted here, but it's a good way to estimate how much yarn you need for long tail cast on. This sweater is worked from the top down, and it's a drop shoulder construction, so here I am starting with the back panel as the pattern indicates. You gotta be silent for counting stitches. Looks like I got the right amount of stitches, and time to start knitting. The majority of this pattern is stockinette, save for the ribbed accents, and there's actually not a whole lot of shaping. I am starting with the back panel, and it is just a rectangle, so we have some pretty basic stockinette knitting here, and this was about how much I could get done on my first night of working on this project. We're gonna fast forward a bit. You can see my back panel is a lot longer, and I'm just about as long as it needs to be before moving on to the next portion of the sweater. Right at 7 inches, right where I need to be for my size. I am making size extra small for myself. And at this point, I need to put these stitches on hold, so I'm gonna grab my end caps from my needle set, pop those on, and then my needles will be free to work on the front shoulders. Here's the back panel so far. Probably would look better if I put it on my back. So that's the progress. I'm gonna pick up for the front shoulders now. Again, nothing fancy with this pattern. We're just picking up from the front according to pattern. I probably should have disclosed at the beginning of this video that this is not a tutorial, rather a vlog. So if you want to knit your own, be sure to purchase the paid for pattern from Petite Knit's website or Ravelry. Now, one of the main features of this sweater is a boat neckline, and you can see here that it is created by casting on a lot of stitches after you pick up for the front shoulders. So you can see the neck opening shape start to form, and I try to put it on, but I realize it's not going to go over my head. So that's the best you get for a preview of what it'll look like before I start knitting the front panel. And then we're just getting back into some more stockinette. In general, I found this yarn pretty okay to work with. I don't prefer working with cotton and linen. It's a great fabric to create for summer garments, but the knitting experience tends to be a little bit rougher than the softer wools that we use more commonly in the colder months. But this, because it was on 5.5mm needles for me, didn't feel too hard on my hands, and the whole project went by pretty quickly, so in general, it felt like not a lot of knitting with stiff yarn. There's the shoulder pickup line right there. There's the neckline. You can really see the sweater start to take shape. At this point, I've joined in the round right at the underarm, which is really exciting because now I can officially try on this top for the first time. So to do that, I'm just grabbing a spare needle so I can get all of my stitches on a needle long enough to try on without dropping any stitches. So you can see there I have 2 needles, so no worries there for when I put this on. And it looks really cute. I'm really excited. I'm curious to see how this will fit. Ooh, oh, that's a good look. I'm already loving how the rolled neckline looks. You can see that the drop shoulder is not very dramatic, and you can see that the armhole depth is not super deep, and overall I'm very pleased with the fit. The pickup line for the shoulder seems to be hitting at the right spot, and it seems like it's going to be very comfortable to wear. So now that I'm confident that the sizing is good, I can just knit away on this sweater. It was a great project to work on throughout the move because it was just a lot of stockinette. Easy to watch TV while knitting, easy to read. And there are always some drawbacks. The trio one got really tangled for me one weekend, and I had to spend, I think, maybe 45 minutes to fix it. But one of my superpowers is untangling yarn, so no yarn was lost. And now I'm at a point where the body is almost long enough, and you can see we've switched locations. This was right after the move into our new house, so please excuse the mess, but the knitting must go on. I got to a body length that I really liked and went straight into the 1x1 ribbing and the tubular bind off, which I think looks really neat. I aimed for a cropped fit with this one so it could hit right at my high-waisted shorts and jeans. And here we are trying it on with some high-waisted pants. Really pleased with the fit, really like the style of the drop shoulder, really love how that 1x1 ribbing looks. Generally really pleased with how this project is going. I definitely have a lot of ends to weave in, but I'm just really excited to see this start taking shape. The neckline looks a little bit loose, which I have some concerns about, but we'll fix that later. And gotta raise the arms to check to make sure it's not too cropped, because I've had that issue with sweaters before. So now we're getting ready to pick up the sleeves, but at this point I always like to weave in my ends because I don't really want to pick up stitches into loose areas where the ends aren't woven in, so I'm taking the time to do that now. And here we are, the body is all cleaned up, all those ends are woven in, and I added this little marker at the back because at this point it is really hard to tell the difference between the front and the back of the sweater, so that little piece of string tied in the back will help me with the direction as I continue this project. So now we're ready to pick up for the neckline. I realized that I wanted to go ahead and do the neckline before the sleeves, because I find that the neckline pulls in the shoulders a bit and can affect how long I want my sleeves to be. So I'm following the directions for the neckline pickup. I'm using a 24-inch circular needle, which was the perfect length for the neckline here. And this neckline luckily is pretty quick. It's just a few rounds of stockinette and then you bind off, which is different for me. Usually I do tubular bind offs with most of my projects as they have some sort of ribbing, but because this is a rolled neck, you don't have any tubular bind off to do. So you have your classic knit bind off and you can see the pickup stitches there. It's a very clean looking neckline. I'm very happy with how this was designed. At first I thought that there was no neckline pickup and that the cast on edge was the raw neckline edge, but this definitely looks much neater, especially around the shoulders. Look at that, it looks great. So here's the neckline after picking up for it, and I wanted to throw in a comparison of what it looked like before. So here's the neckline before and after. A little bit different, definitely a better fit with the pickup neckline. Here I am trying it on with the new neckline. It really brought it in, which is good. And one con of this being black, it does pick up a lot of lint. You can sort of see some yarn marling there in the clip, which is nice. A little bit of ends to weave in at the shoulders, but generally loving how this is looking. And now it's finally time to pick up the sleeves. And hard to tell from the scenery, but at this point I'm actually in Seattle for Flock Fiber Festival. I'm at my friend Leslie's house and trying on the sleeve. At this point it's about how long I want it to be, which is exciting. I'm opting for a bracelet length and I'm ready for ribbing and casting off the sleeves, or at least the first sleeve. I think I didn't film any knitting of the second sleeve. So here's some tubular bind off for you. I actually find tubular bind off to be quite relaxing. I like the process, and because it makes such a clean finish, it really is exciting to me to complete. And here I am in the newly set up craft room. It's still not perfectly clean and organized, but there's a lot more space than there was before. And yeah, at this point, all the sleeves are done. I'm so excited to show off this almost finished object. There's the sleeve cuff, looks really good with the tubular. The neckline, getting a little bit rolled, looks really neat. The shoulder line. And the first try on as an almost completed object. Wow, this is so exciting. I love how the bracelet length sleeves look. It's a little bit of a baggier sleeve and I just love the black color of this. The fabric feels really nice. It's the perfect length with my favorite high-waisted shorts. So all that's left is to block this. You can see I cleaned up that shoulder line there when I wove in my ends. You can see it's a little bit see-through. I think that's an important thing to note if you're trying to knit this yourself. The fabric is not very opaque. So for blocking, I always use a little bit of wool wash. Sorella has my favorite wool wash. Their scents are so good. This French linen scent is from their spring tonals collection, and it just smells so fresh and clean. And I'm just using some room temperature or cool water in a bowl and dunking that. Because this is cotton and linen, it can take some agitation. It's not going to felt like wool would, and I try to agitate my linen pieces a little bit because it does soften the fibers. So you'll see me swishing around the sweater a bit, which is something that I do just for my summer knits. After about half an hour soaking in the wool wash, I then roll it into a towel and then stamp it out with my feet just to make sure all the extra water is out, and then this is ready to go on the blocking boards. I'm laying it flat here, and I don't really use pins as much as I used to in my blocking because I find that even if you stretch something out with pins, it tends to bounce back a bit even after you take the pins out, and this doesn't have any special lace that I'm trying to open up or cables that are trying to open up, so because it's just plain stockinette, I'm just patting it out into its natural shape and letting it lay flat to dry. And here is the final try on. The Sevilla blouse. I love it. You can see we still have a residual moving box in the background, just as a marker of how far we've come since the beginning of this project. I am loving how it feels after blocking. The fabric softened up, all of the stitches got really neat. I'm very obsessed with the boat neckline. It's the perfect sort of straight across, but not really tight on my neckline. I did leave the marker in the back there because we're gonna do one more finishing touch at the end, but overall, I just love how this looks. And as the finishing touch, I felt like this needed a petite knit tag. First and foremost because I cannot tell the front from the back, and secondly because I had this tag that I had no project for. So perfect opportunity. The sewing job I did was not the neatest, but it worked. And here is the finished Sevilla blouse. What a fun project to take me through the end of summer, a beautiful staple piece that I'm hoping to wear both into the fall and winter, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening and watching along. Thanks, and until next time, bye.